Hey everyone, it is time for episode 3 of Say What Now. And today is an all politics hour. We're still trying to get our lighting fixed, so bear with us. This is our third episode of Say What Now, and today is Super Tuesday, so we have a lot to talk about. And we're going to talk about Super Tuesday. We're going to talk about the end of Black History Month, of course. We're going to talk about Oscars so White and Chris Rock and what he did, as well as a wrap up of the South Carolina primary, Democratic primary between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and our thoughts about that. So join us if you have any questions. Of course, tweet us at saywhatkcrane. Or you can email us at saywhatcrane@gmail.com or leave your questions and answers right here, and we'll be able to discuss them with you all. So let's talk about really quickly the South Carolina primary. In South Carolina, it was between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and that contest was a landslide. Hillary Clinton won the Democratic primary in South Carolina by 75% to 25% over Bernie Sanders, which was one of the first states that the Democrats had to compete in, where there was a lot of citizens of color that were going to participate, particularly in South Carolina. Half of, or a majority of the population that voted in the Democratic primary were Black people and Black women in particular. And so it gave us a glimpse about where both candidates were with Black voters, and Hillary Clinton won in a landslide. I'm very confused, I guess, about how that happened so demonstratively. There were definitely people of color, Black people in particular, on the ground in South Carolina that were supporters of Bernie Sanders, Senator Sanders. And so I'm not quite sure about what happened with that ground game, what happened with him being able to reach some of these voters. It was kind of disappointing. I'm still undecided, as many of you guys know, about who I will support when the primaries come to my state. But it was very disappointing from my point of view that Senator Sanders wasn't able to get as many voters of color, Black voters in particular, in South Carolina, a place that I know very well, where I spent 5 years in South Carolina, know a lot of the players in South Carolina, a lot of the young activists in South Carolina. So it was quite disappointing not to see that he wasn't able to get this type of a showing there. So we'll see what happens when they go through the next dates. Like today in Super Tuesday, there are states all across the South where Senator Sanders and Secretary Clinton are going to be competing in. As we're talking this evening, I have CNN and some other outlets up to see exactly what the returns are looking like across the country. And it seems to me from the conversations that I have been hearing throughout the day that Senator Sanders is looking to find his voice with the Black voters in other parts of the country, not just in the Deep South, which is again a little bit confusing. And I'm very interested to be able to speak with some of the surrogates for the Sanders campaign to figure out exactly what is going on, because the majority of Black people live in the Deep South. So if you are neglecting to connect with folks from the Deep South, I'm not quite sure how you're going to be able to convince the electorate that you will be able to win over, or your message wins over Black voters. So it'll be interesting to see how we roll on as we approach the DNC this summer. We're going to kind of we move from the South Carolina primaries to getting ready for the Oscars. Now, of course, the lead up to the Oscars all month long, in the past several weeks, we've been hearing about hashtag Oscars so white, where people were threatening to boycott the Oscars, not going to the Oscars, demanding that the Oscars do something, or the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences is the actual organization that hosts the Oscars. And a lot of folks in either actors and actresses or just activists in spaces of color were complaining that once again, none of the best actor or actress or supporting actor and actress nominees were of color. They were all white for the second year in a row. And it caused a lot of controversy like it did last year. And so many actors and actresses decided that they were going to protest. And this protest was in the form of many different things. One was the very noted and wonderful and gifted director Ava DuVernay and Ryan Coogler. Ryan Coogler is the director, of course, of Creed, that was shut out. Many people thought that it should have won or received some nominations, but the only nomination that the movie received was for Sylvester Stallone for Best Supporting Actor in the movie. So they teamed up and headed to Flint and held a wonderful event that was streamed live on YouTube for several hours up in Flint, and was able to raise over $100,000 to help some of the citizens and residents of Flint in their ongoing struggle in the aftermath of having the lead leach into their water and poison so many of their residents, including so many young kids. And of course, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago in the aftermath of what Governor Rick Snyder is and is not doing to assist those the residents and the citizens of Flint to recover from this. Why did it happen in the first place? How could they have prevented it? And what are their next steps going to be? So they held that Justice for Flint rally. There was other activism going on. There was the Oscar words or something of that effect in New York, where they showed all of the words that Black people or people of color stated in Oscar nominated films. And I believe last year there was only about 82 words or something like that. It was a very small number, let's say that, of words that were spoken on film by actors and actresses of color in these Oscar nominated films, really just to illuminate the fact. Of course, at the beginning of February, we saw a lot of Black actors and actresses and other folks in the Hollywood industry that came to the NAACP Image Awards to lend support to that award show as another backlash against the Oscars. So the Oscars and their nominations, as well as to support our own award show that was created about almost 50 years ago now. And so we were seeing, but we finally got to the Academy Awards on Sunday night. And on Sunday night, there was a lot of conflicting reviews about Chris Rock's opening monologue. Of course, we knew that he scrapped his original, or the one that he had already been preparing prior to the Oscar So White campaign, and developed a brand new opening monologue, which for some people said didn't really work out that well. I watched it. It made me cringe somewhat. It made me laugh in certain parts, but overall, it wasn't what I thought I was going to get from Chris Rock. Chris Rock, of course, is known very much for speaking out about racial injustices, racial justice issues in a comedic style, but also in an informative style as well. And I just don't think that it really hit the mark of what he wanted to do, or what we thought he would do, I guess is really the point. He also brought out Stacey Dash. Let me just be clear that I didn't watch the whole Oscars. After his opening monologue was finished, I was finished, as I said on Facebook earlier that day, and I stuck true to that. I didn't watch the whole Oscars, but I saw on Facebook and other outlets where he was, what he did and the comments that he made, like he brought out Stacey Dash in a comedic kind of way to say that she was the Academy's new director for diversity, which of course she would never do. And it would be a joke of so many different types of proportions if Stacey Dash actually was the Academy's director for diversity, because she has talked about why we don't need a BT, we don't need the Image Awards, we don't need this and that, that we are all one, whichever. Basically trying to say that we are making up this issue about the lack of diversity within Hollywood, which Many different outlets have already debunked what she said. She also said that we don't need a Black History Month. So a lot of foolery was said by Stacey Dash during Black History Month, and Black Twitter, everybody else, so many different outlets have already told you guys why that didn't make any sense. There's no reason to repeat it. Let's just say that she was wrong and we were right all along. And I think that the Oscars illuminated it. We did thankfully see some of the Oscar nominated actors and actresses like Leonardo DiCaprio talk about why there is a need for diversity in Hollywood. We also saw Bette Midler, who was obviously not nominated. I don't think she's been in a film in quite some time, but she was definitely talking about how disgusting it is that we are still talking about this need to diversify all aspects of Hollywood, including, of course, behind and in front of the camera, and talking about how every year people are asking when is Leonardo DiCaprio going to get his Oscar, but telling what folks are telling black people and other people of color that we can wait our turn next year. She said that in one of her Facebook messages on Sunday, and got a lot of reviews, a lot of hate mail as well. But I think a lot of people of color were appreciative of her being an ally in our cause to diversify Hollywood in this kind of manner. So there was a lot of talk about the Oscars. The Oscars are usually boring unless you're there, and I think even if you are there, they might still be boring. So I don't know. At the end of the day, I think that we need opportunity, as Chris Rock ultimately said in his opening monologue, as Viola Davis eloquently stated when she won her Emmy this past year, which got a lot of flack, that Black and other people of color and other marginalized demographics, we just need opportunity to show what we're able to do, and not just one opportunity here or there, but just expand the ability for actors and actresses from all backgrounds to be able to compete for these types of roles, particularly when you're talking about roles that are based on fictional characters. They could absolutely be played by any person of color, just like they can be played by any white person or any other nationality or ethnicity. And speaking of that, we talk about Gods of Egypt, where they cast an all-white cast to play people who are supposed to be from Egypt, which is an African country. And so they did not even select not one person of color to play any of those roles in Gods of Egypt, which I think even underscores the more of how tragic it is that even when you're trying to depict real people of color, non-persons of color are selected to do these roles. It's just another slap in the face to talk about, and helps us illuminate the fact that there needs to be more accountability when we're talking about diversity in Hollywood and other spaces as well. So, and now we really want to just talk about the election, right? So today is Super Tuesday. So I hope if you are in one of the 11 states that were voting today all across the country, particularly in the South, that you did get out there and vote. At the current count right now, it looks like Donald Trump has won Georgia, Alabama, Massachusetts, and Tennessee. We're still waiting for other states to finish up their voting for the evening. And really briefly, since we're talking about Donald Trump and his wins for this evening, of course, for the past couple of days, we've been talking about Donald Trump and his disavowal, his non-repudiation, whichever the line that you want to be on, of David Duke and the Klan. Now, David Duke is a name that I remember when I was a kid. We heard about David Duke. He tried to run for, I think, governor of Louisiana or something like that. But he was a grand wizard of the Klan. And, or he might have tried to run for senator, whichever. He tried to run for elected office, but we all knew him to be a former grand wizard of the Klan. And so, his ties run deep with the Klan, and we all know what the Klan is about. And so there was a controversy on Sunday when Donald Trump was being interviewed by Jake Tapper of CNN, and to find out whether or not he would disavow and give back money that David Duke gave to him, knowing David Duke's ties to the Klan. There's confusion about whether or not on Sunday, Donald Trump said that he repudiated the Klan. On Friday, allegedly, he did say it. I haven't heard the tape, but most people are saying that, yeah, he did actually repudiate the Klan and what they're standing for. And today we have the Senate Majority Leader as well as the Speaker of the House coming out and saying the Republican Party is not for the Klan. There's no room for the Klan in the Republican Party. That there's no racism in the Republican Party. And what I've been saying all day today on Twitter and other spaces is that it's good that the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader um, are disavowing the Klan, but that's kind of an easy lift. It's not that difficult for you to get on TV or during your press conference and say, "Oh, we don't like the Klan. There's no room for the Klan in the party." That's easy. What is a little bit harder for you to do, and what I think, as communities of color and as Americans, period, need for both the Speaker of the House and any of the Republicans, quite frankly, to do, and if Democrats see this on their side, for them to do as well, is to repudiate the racist speech that some of their members have stated. There are plenty of members of Congress, particularly on the Republican side, but I'm sure that there may be some on the Democratic side as well, that I've heard say racist things about African Americans, have said terrible things, homophobic things, Islamophobic words and rhetoric that has never been repudiated. And that's what you need. You also need for them to repudiate the fact that they are blocking legislation that would prevent discrimination in housing, discrimination, particularly in the vote. That's what you need. It's easy for you to get up here and say, we don't like the Klan, but everybody that is racist is not wearing robes. Everyone that is racist is not a part of the Klan. So what you really need to do, and what will be leadership by the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader, is to actually figure out ways for you to push through some of these pieces of legislation that would actually help communities that are disadvantaged and marginalized, to push them ahead. What would also be helpful is if you actually held a hearing on the Voting Rights Amendment Act, so that we could restore Section 4B of the Voting Rights Act. That would be leadership. That would be something that you really needed to do outside of just disavowing the Klan. What you also could do is stop talking about Americans who are same-gender loving Americans, and preventing them, and trying to enact laws that would codify discrimination in the state as well as in the federal laws. That would be helpful, instead of just saying that you disavow the Klan. I don't know if the Speaker is willing to do that. I don't know if the Senate Majority Leader is willing to do that, but I think that would speak a lot more than just saying that you're not, don't agree with the Klan, and the Klan has no room for you, or there's no room for the Klan in the Republican Party. And so right now we're still trying to look for these wins to come out of the states for Super Tuesday. It's going to be a long day for us to watch these returns. I know that right now we're looking on CNN that Hillary Clinton is winning by a landslide. Down the road in the Commonwealth of Virginia, looks like 64% to 36%. Clinton is up. Sanders has, of course, won his home state of Vermont. So we'll see what's going to happen. Oh, and speaking of course, yesterday we had a really good event here in DC. Shout out to one of my classmates, Marcus Ware, who will be on with us in a few weeks to talk about part 2 of Super Tuesday. We were able to partner with a local restaurant here in town to have somewhat of a Democratic caucus. So we brought folks who were supporters of Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders supporters, and a lot of undecideds to talk about the issues, not just to go back and forth and argue amongst ourselves, but really talk about some of the issues that are of concern to the millennial population, and to figure out where the candidates stand on those issues. It was a great event. We were speaking with our participants for about 2 hours yesterday, and I think that we got some headway. We got a lot of undecideds at the end of it, but it seemed like a lot of folks were leaning towards Secretary Clinton that came out yesterday. So we had a really good time with that event. And I look forward to having some more events like that and really just having a dialogue about the issues, because at the end of the day, we really need to be conscious about who it is that we select as the Democratic nominee as well as the Republican nominee. If you lean Republican, I think that you have a hard job ahead of you, because this field is quite interesting, and I think they have gone off script as far as talking about the issues. They're more so talking about the personality, and really, in my opinion, it's because they allowed a certain candidate to really get down in the trenches as far as speaking of Mexican Americans or undocumented persons, speaking about people of color, speaking about people who are not able-bodied, in ways that are disparaging. And many of the other candidates for president did not say anything about it. They laughed it off. They said it wasn't me. They said, I wouldn't go down that road, but I'm not going to say anything about what he says. And now he is, for all intents and purposes, the presumptive nominee. This little breaking point right here says that Clinton is expected to win 5 states: Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Tennessee, and Virginia. Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Tennessee, and Virginia. What do all those states have in common? All of those states are predominantly Black when you're talking about the Democratic primary voters. So we have a lot to talk about in the next coming weeks about what is Senator Sanders going to do to attract people of color to his side. How is he going to do this? Because she has now won Arkansas, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Virginia, and South Carolina. North Carolina has not voted yet, but if she wins that, she has in essence swept the Deep South. We're still waiting for Mississippi to vote, I believe, in a couple of weeks. But I mean, really, that's the majority of the Black vote that she has won. So this is really concerning for people who want to see a vigorous debate of the issues from both candidates. But if one candidate cannot find a way to connect with voters of color, or voters of color only in one particular part of the nation, that's going to be a real big problem when it's coming to the general election, when you have to convince all of the country that you should be our next president of the United States. So I think that he has a long way to go to convince not only citizens of color, but also citizens who are about racial justice, that we should vote for him in some of these later primaries. And so it's going to be a very interesting next few months. Senator Sanders stated today in some of his interviews that he will go on to the Democratic convention, which will not occur until the end of July. And so we have about 4.5 months of Clinton and Sanders going back and forth, debating their issues and gathering up more delegates in the March to July. And I think it's particularly interesting as we're looking at some of these results come in for the next couple of minutes, of how widespread the lead Secretary Clinton has. So I'm going on to CNN.com to see what they're talking about as far as the wins across the country for Clinton and Sanders. In Virginia right now, with 88% of the vote in, it says that Secretary Clinton has won. Let's see, flip it back here just a second. Let's start with Alabama. And Alabama is still trying to come in right now, but Secretary Clinton has a 76 to 17% lead in Alabama right now, with only 14% in. In Massachusetts, Secretary Clinton is winning 51 to 47%, but that's going to be a while coming in, as only 14% in Massachusetts. So I'll be very interested where Boston and Amherst comes in. In Arkansas, with only 4% of it in, we have Secretary Clinton with 68% and Senator Sanders with 28%. Of course, we remember that Secretary Clinton served as Arkansas's first lady, I believe, for two separate times when former President Bill Clinton served as governor. Right now, it's very close in Oklahoma. Secretary Clinton, Senator Sanders is leading Secretary Clinton 50% to 40%, with 28% of that in, and we're still waiting for those returns to come on in from the state of Oklahoma. Of course, you know that we have the Super Tuesday states are all across the country, and so we have a lot of results coming in, and we will pick it up next week to let you know exactly all of the different states, how they turned out, and what we think is going to happen as we continue on to the March to July. So I hope you enjoyed our abbreviated version of Say What Now. If you have any questions for us, of course, email us at saywhatcrane@gmail.com, saywhatcrane@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at saywhatkcrane, at saywhatkcrane. Updates will be there and via our Facebook page. So for all of us here, we'll see you soon.